Pine Barrens, New Jersey. Aviation history. What do these two things have in common? We're about to find out today on Vacation Education.
The year was 1928. Spectators' dreams materialized before their eyes as the latest frontier was being conquered. And one man's destiny answered.
As we look down this beautiful road here on one of the back streets of New Jersey, obviously the Pine Barrens have a lot of pine trees, and it's actually pretty picturesque. The weather cannot be any nicer. But something unfortunate happened just down this way. There's a lot of stories that go along with the Pine Barrens here in New Jersey. You got a lot of gangster stories about Atlantic City, what could be possibly buried out here. You got stories of the Jersey Devil running around, causing mischief. But this is another type of story. Aviation history story.
During the country's flourishing economic times, much of the focus was on aeronautics and this intriguing sky frontier. Charles Lindbergh and Amelia Earhart made the headlines for their respective adventures into that uncharted space.
What's going on, adventurers? VacayJ, Vacation Education. We're here on location in New Jersey. I got the VacayJD back there. And of course, Ellie the Bee is around here somewhere. There she is. Now that you've seen the whole crew, let's get to our story for today. In 1928, right around the 1920s, there was a gentleman here in the United States. His name was Charles Lindbergh, and he was making aviation history, flying all over the world.
On December 14th, 1927, the Lone Eagle, as Lindbergh was known, would fly from Washington, D.C. to Mexico City with technological advancements in aviation that opened up the skies for long-distance flights.
Lindbergh actually went to Mexico, was one of his stops on one of his aviation missions, and the people of Mexico were so impressed by him that they were like, we need to get our own Charles Lindbergh. And that is what takes us to this area today.
What was his first name? Emilio?
Emilio.
Okay.
Emilio Carranza.
Meanwhile, south of the border, there was Carranza, who also flew in these circles in the name of his countrymen. He, like other aviators of the era, pushed the aviation envelope by breaking records and taking missions that crossed borders and imaginations. Carranza, who came from a bloodline of leaders, was destined to do great things. Like Charles Lindbergh, Carranza had made several notable flights in his career, but it was not until September of 1927 that both aviation pioneers had an actual opportunity to meet in person in El Paso, Texas. It was reported that both men quickly became friends and continued to communicate during their aeronautic trials and adventures.
This aviation hero from Mexico, Carranza, wanted to emulate and wanted to become basically the Mexican Lindbergh. They even went as far as to build an exact replica plane of Charles Lindbergh's.
The group quickly commissioned the building of a Ryan B-1 aircraft by the Mahoney Aircraft Corporation of San Diego, California. It was a plane modeled after the Spirit of St. Louis, which Lindbergh had just recently flown. The prerequisite for this plane was that it was to be able to fly 24 hours continuously.
And it was called the Mexico Excelsior.
Carranza oversaw the construction of the plane that would eventually be named Excelsior, named in honor of the newspaper that had offered so much support in the public arena. It was on May 5th, 1928, that Carranza finally arrived in Mexico City in his newly constructed Excelsior. 100,000 cheering spectators awaited his arrival from San Diego, California. Carranza had now set the record for the longest distance nonstop flight by a Mexican pilot.
I mean, it was a big deal.
On June 11th, 1928, at 8 minutes after 8 a.m., Carranza departed Mexico City for Washington, D.C. The crowd's voices on the ground chanted, "Viva Mexico, Viva Carranza." The newspapers spread the news of his flight north. Every medium of the time headlined the mission. Towns on the northerly route along the flight path spotting the Ryan B-1 plane reported the sightings. A ship in the Gulf of Mexico noted Excelsior's progress as it passed through New Orleans, Louisiana at 7:10 p.m. It was 11:30 p.m. when Excelsior was spotted over Atlanta, Georgia, and at 1:45 a.m. it was over Spartanburg, South Carolina. Then nothing. It was not until 2 hours and 15 minutes later, at 4 a.m., that the Civil Aviation Administration reported that Carranza had made an emergency landing in Mooresville, North Carolina, landing just 300 miles south from Washington, D.C. The reason for his emergency landing was never made clear, but what was noted was the sense of relief over his safe landing. On the afternoon of June 12, 1928, Carranza continued his quest of reaching Washington, D.C. His landing evoked celebrations in both countries. In the United States, President Calvin Coolidge honored him at a White House dinner where Washington's elite were invited to honor him. It was then that Carranza announced another flight he would make. This time, he was going to New York City. On June 17th, both airfields were buzzing with military escorts and squadrons to send him on his way from Washington, D.C., and then to receive him on the other end.
Emilio, when he flew here, Roosevelt Field up in New York City, and a lot of people don't know this, but he was treated to a royal hero's welcome at a ticker tape parade. Over 100,000 people in New York City came out to honor him.
They threw parades. I mean, these people were
Ticker tape.
Ticker tape?
Yeah, that's when all the confetti falls from the buildings.
Okay.
Ticker tape.
Ticker tape. Okay,
That's what they call it.
very good.
Mayor Jimmy Walker of New York City was on hand to greet him. During Carranza's stay in New York, he enjoyed celebrity status. He was even invited to West Point Military Academy to review the troops, an honor never given again to a visiting dignitary with his rank of captain.
They've never had a captain inspect the troops at West Point with that lower grade.
They were like rock stars back in the day, right? He was becoming almost like a folk hero in Mexico. And they actually erected a monument to him. Let's go over and take a look. The trip to New York was done in stages and went smoothly. But the return flight was going to be a non-stop grueling test of endurance. Carranza delayed his departure for 3 days because of bad weather.
Carranza made several attempts to return to Mexico City, but inclement weather made it impossible to depart. Carranza had attempted to head back to Mexico in Excelsior, but Lindbergh advised him not to fly in the bad weather the region was experiencing.
Rumor has it that he was forced to leave on orders from a jealous general whose telegram to Carranza was reportedly found later in the aviator's pocket.
On July 12, 1928, Carranza was having dinner with his father at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York when he received a telegram from his superiors back in Mexico.
Leave immediately without excuse or pretext, or the quality of your manhood would be in doubt.
So just imagine, they're like, why did he do this? Why did he run off? He was smarter than that. He was, it was better pilot than to launch a crazy flight like this in the bad weather. So they got the general literally challenging his courage almost. Like he wasn't courageous enough to set off maybe in questionable weather. Then abruptly flew off the evening of July 12th, 1928 in a wild thunderstorm.
Went back to the airport, which is already, his airplane was already fueled and ready to go, got in it, and took off in the hellacious electrical storm that was going on at the time. And he had to know, being a pilot myself, I know that he had to know that he didn't have a chance. He was going to die, but he was the type of man that he'd obey a military order from his general to go home right now. And he did.
Logs indicate that Carranza departed at 7:18 p.m. during an electrical storm.
And he took off from Roosevelt Field on that eventful night and came to his death.
Unfortunately, Emilio didn't make it. He ended up crashing right here in the Pine Barrens. After Emilio crashed here in the Pine Barrens, the way they knew that he didn't make it any farther, this area in New Jersey is known for, is blueberries. There's a lot of farms and agriculture in this area, and he actually got discovered by blueberry farmers.
The next day, John Carr, a local resident working alongside his family picking berries in the fields, discovered parts of what was one of Excelsior's wings. Knowing that it could be part of the lost plane, Carr notified the local authorities of Sandy Ridge, New Jersey, and soon a search and rescue effort was underway.
They went and they searched, and they found the body. They stood on a guard to his coffin.
That's when the history of the whole thing started. They realized the importance of the job that they were doing at that time.
Carranza's body was found a day after he crashed in the pinelands of southern New Jersey, known now as Wharton State Forest.
There was actually a flashlight in his hand. When he died, obviously he was looking for a place to land, and he couldn't find a place to land, so he was literally looking with a flashlight. And the reason it was still in his hand is because the flashlight was actually in his hand. It was impaled into his palm.
After the plane went down, a lot of people went out to the Pine Barrens in search of artifacts that they could find.
Here at the monument, a placard that explains some of the things we're talking about. So if you've ever traveled here, or if you ever wanted to check this out for yourself, there is a picture of Emilio right there, and there is a United States map. And of course, just like the monument itself, it has Spanish on the right side, but on this side, it actually has some information about him as well. And it says, this monument commemorates the legacy and tragic accident of Captain Emilio Carranza, a Mexican aviator born in Ramos, Mexico. Carranza was returning from a goodwill mission on a nonstop flight from New York to Mexico City when he crashed during a thunderstorm. His goodwill mission marked the longest flight flown by a Mexican aviator up to this time. The children of Mexico, like I already mentioned, saved their pennies to quarry stone from his hometown in Mexico for the construction of the monument. So the stone right there actually came from Mexico itself. In 1931, each block represents a state of the Republic of Mexico. The American Legion, Post 11, erected the monument with a pledge to keep his ideals alive. Each year, they honor him with a ceremony on the second Saturday in July.
There are pennies put on and around the monument to make wishes. So this is their dry wishing well, if you will. So that's just something that's going on. It's a pleasant surprise to us, and we know that people care, people stop by, they're thinking about it, and they're doing this on a regular basis.
There is English on one side and Spanish on the other. And this one says, Messenger of Peace. The people of Mexico hope that your high ideals will be realized.
It's hard to read.
Yep. And you can see his name right here, Emilio Carranza.
Died.
It says
Accidentally?
accidentally, yeah.
On July.
On July 8th, maybe, something, in flight. So it definitely says in flight right here. So this side of the monument over here actually is in Spanish. And the reason that this got erected in both English and Spanish, obviously because he was a Mexican folk hero, pilot, but also because the people, like I already mentioned, of Mexico donated a lot of money and stuff to have this placed here because it was his hero, their hero as well. And many people travel here, the family and people that still travel here once a year to celebrate his final
Demise.
I was going to say his final flight.
Yeah, final flight.
This side of the monument obviously is some sort of Aztec symbol.
The feet and the fallen eagle represents Emilio's crash to earth here in New Jersey.
And this side is an arrow pointing to the sky.
On the back side of the monument is an arrow, a Mexican arrow pointing upwards towards the sky, and that represents Mexico's aviation and flying, to keep on flying and moving forward.
If you're ever here in New Jersey, and here in the summertime, July, very popular time to be here in New Jersey, they have a ceremony every year here to commemorate him and his flight.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Mount Holly American Legion Post 11 would like to welcome everyone here today to celebrate with us the honor of Emilio Carranza.
Captain Emilio Carranza's goodwill flight across the sky was more than a peace mission for his Mexico. It was a commission that carried on its wings the hopes and dreams of a people then and today. As they waited for the Mexican authorities to claim his body, the Legionnaires made a promise to always remember Carranza's mission of goodwill.
Hey, Dad, did you enjoy your little visit here to the Carranza Memorial?
Yeah, I think it was really amazing. I'm glad we did it. You know, it's a strange thing to see a monument to a Mexican famous person here in the Pine Barrens. It's so out of place.
Moral of the story here is, right? Obviously, this was a great man, admired by many different people, but even sometimes you can get a little ahead of yourself. You know, don't let people push you into a bad situation. You know what's right, you know what to do, you know your life. Don't let someone egg you on and put you in the Emilio situation. Even though that his story ended here, it's reminded us all that sometimes in life, you gotta take flight. Let's go. And that's the VKJ wisdom of the day. From the VKJ family here in New Jersey, to all of you out there, stay safe. Catch you on the next one. We're out of here. I know for a fact that Ellie the Bee loved this. And you want to know why that is? It's because Ellie the Bee, I have a funny feeling, is part Chihuahua. She might have some Mexican ancestry in there. Don't even try to pretend like she's full-bred Toy Fox Terrier. I absolutely doubt that. So anyhow, from our part Chihuahua, my dad and I, from here in New Jersey, we are out of here.
And he had already done more and accomplished more than most people would do if they lived to be 110.